All right, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. It is time for Free Tip Friday, and the Bead Doctor is in. I have so many things on the table in front of me, so I'm taking just a last moment here to make sure that everything looks amazing before we get into it, because we've got some things to go over. I have some Bead Doctor. Oh, hang on a second. Let me make sure. Janice, give me the thumbs up. Can you hear me? Or can you guys hear me real quick? Bear with me here just a second, because it looks like my headpiece went out. So hang on. Give me those thumbs up again if you guys can hear me. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see. Okay, great. And JP, you can hear me. Can you still hear me? Perfect. Okay. So let me get back to the comments. And let's get this show on the road. Here I am. Alrighty. So again, give me some thumbs up. I'm still working on the audio, but I think it's better. So let me know what you guys think, if it sounds good to you. And Janice is going to be on with me in just a couple of moments, so that we will get on our Bead Doctor extravaganza we've got going. And I've got some other things to show you, but real quick, I just want to remind everybody, let me go over here. We have the Great Bead Extravaganza, which is starting actually tonight with a big preview at 5 p.m. Pacific or 8 p.m. Eastern, where all the designers are going to get together and kind of show you the things we're going to be doing all weekend. And then Brenda Schwader earlier today, if you go to the Great Bead Extravaganza webpage, she's going to give us a desert walk starting at 2 p.m., which is great because she actually lives in Tucson, which is awesome. And we also have, I wanted to mention, and I'll put it up at the beginning of this broadcast and then I'll put it up at the end. We have a really fun event that, or first I want to do this. I was going to talk about signing up for your newsletter, and I'll flash this again. We have a little Feeling the Love sale going on today. So if you grabbed your newsletter, you know you saw that coupon and you also saw this mix. So I'm going to bring Janice in so we can talk about this mix real quick. So JP, here you come. Let me unmute you. Can you hear me, East Coast?
I can. Bead Doctor West Coast.
All right. Well, here you are. How are you?
I'm great. I always love to be Bead Doctor.
I know, it's our favorite. It's a real holdover from those brick and mortar days, right? When we would do the Bead Doctor right in person. But before we get to Bead Doctor, because it kind of ties into the project we're doing today, I'm going to add in this this kind of weird picture here. Let me get the cameras all arranged. Let me make that one big and let me move it over for everyone. We dropped a really cool little mini mix today.
Beautiful.
And I'm going to use it to demo some of the questions that we got. But this is a mini mix that we did kind of for the Valentine's holiday, but also kind of just because it's cool. It's really fun. We are calling it Heartbreaker, and the linchpin of this guy is 1 dozen 10 millimeter, I believe, Swarovski crystal hearts that are just so chunky and delicious. And I put together a little mix in a 10-gram tube. It's a little bit more, I think. It might actually be 12 grams. But the seed beads in there, it's kind of hard for you to see. Karen's photo is really great on the website. There's that alabaster or that gray that we love so much. We've got the Duracoat, the pewter. We've got a matte black and a shiny black, and then we've got that really nice brick. And then that one's at 42. I can't remember that number, but that's that silver line one.
Let me go find it, okay? And I'll tell you in just a second what it is.
I love it.
It
is going to be a really limited edition. It came out this morning. And we just love it. They're selling quickly. Of course, it's a limited edition, so we don't have a unlimited amount of these beauties. Pardon me, Drea just linked it.
Oh, good. Okay, because I'm kind of wandering.
The recipe.
Yeah, I'm a bit wandering. Like,
yes, well, you find it right.
Website.
You find it right on the homepage of the website in Justin, and then under collections, under Heartbreaker, there's the recipe for everything. So it has all of the seed beads that are in it as well.
You know, Kate, I don't see the recipe.
Well,
I think the recipe did not get added, so that we have to add it.
Well, see how I put it on the screen right there. So
let me
see. Why don't you go ahead and whoops, I'm going to leave it right there.
Oh, but I'm looking under the mini mix. I'm not looking under the recipe.
And so Drea just put it all in, and I was thinking it's the 4270. It's the Duracoat silver lined magenta. The mix is in Justin, and it's on the homepage right now in trending now on beadshop.com. So you'll find it all right there. So today is Friday, February 5th. So we do have a limited amount. So grab it up when you see it. It's really fun. And I want to just show you a couple of things that I might do with it. And that's going to flow right into our first bead doctor question. And if you guys do have some other questions, toss them up on the screen. We may or may not get to them today, but we will also eventually get to them. Let me move this mini mix over here in the corner. I grabbed some of the 1.5 metallic charcoal, which I love.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I thought, I'm doing a lot of laddering lately, and I'm going to show you this project that I'm doing tomorrow for the Great Bead Extravaganza, which is also all about laddering. But I used the heart. Whoops, let me take this off of and I'm going to actually make this bigger. Let me get Drea's thing off of here, and let me spotlight this real here. There we go. And this is, Janice, you can look this one up. It's the heart. Beautiful tiara cast heart that we have, and it would make a great button to mix with this mix as a wrap. I think it would look really fantastic as a wrap. And you can see these 10 millimeter hearts are the whole. Let me get a piece of wire or something.
Kate, it's called Follow Your Heart.
Follow your heart. That's it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I cleaned the Facebook room so it's nice and clean, but of course that means that I put all the stuff that I usually use, I put it all away. So I do have some wire here, so you can see how the whole size runs through these hearts like this, right? And so you could ladder these hearts right in to a really great ladder bracelet, just simple laddering with the infinity stitch. And then you could figure out, I'm gonna tell you, how many of these size 8s. And it's one of the things we're going to talk about, some more design work and things like that. But I don't know how you start your wrap bracelets, JP, but my guess is it's about the same, that you kind of get some focals in there, and then you see how many beads will kind of match and fit across the widest part of that bead. So that looks like I might use 2, 4, maybe 5 beads across, and maybe various patterns or however I would do it, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would ladder in this heart. The thing about the heart is, of course, it's heart shaped. So using a piece or a bead that has a little bit of an odd shape to it, what you would do is you are going to see a little bit of space around that heart, but I'm really fine with that, right? And you can see you would ladder up there, and then you'd ladder through the heart, and maybe I'd ladder through it a couple of times, and then I'd bring my pieces down and start laddering here. So you will see a little bit of negative space around that heart. You can kind of see that there. But I think it would add a nice design element. If you don't want to use something like this for laddering, this is something that you've done in the past, Janice. I grabbed some 5mm strap leather. And we've done where we kind of ladder over the top, not ladder, but we macrame some beads over the top, and then you can macrame like these kind of hearts kind of right over the top of it too. That would be really fun as a ladder. You could also use 2 strands. I was thinking this might be kind of interesting. 2 strands. I got the purple as well, just because I thought the purple looked kind of interesting. You could create some kind of ladder bracelet that has the, in between. We've never done this one really, but it's something maybe to play with, and you get the right size clasp. Maybe that 20mm clasp might work, and you could ladder in between those 2, which might be kind of fun. Okay. And we also have the black strap leather too, which would also look cool. So there's a lot of, this is kind of a creative challenge throwing down. But if you don't want to ladder, and this brings us kind of to our first bead doctor question. We had a bead doctor question from, let me see. I had it pulled up here. Bear with me here just a second. We had one from, oh, that's the wrong bead doctor list. Here we go. We had, let me see. There it is. So we had a question from Terry Larson, and she said she had a question, and it was a really basic one about crimping. She says she's been beading on and off for many years, so she's not a newbie. But one of the things that stumps her is when she watches the professional designers, they seem to have such ease aligning the crimp and the beading wire while making sure that the end of the wire, when brought back through the crimp tube, doesn't cross, right? Because we always say when you do that crimp, you want to make sure that your little wire is laying side by side like this and not crossed, right? So she says there's got to be a trick for that, right? And so I was going to share my trick, and then Janice, I don't know if you have some additions to that. But what I thought I would use is I would use this mix as kind of an example to also show how we would use a button to close, like this heart button right there, and how we might use that as the clasp and then do a loop on the other side. So it kind of covers 2 bases.
Well, that reminds me, Kate, that I had two ideas of what to do with this mix, and one of them was to work on like soft flex or even on beading thread. You could use, if you use soft flex or stringing wire, you could use the crimp beads, but to use those hearts because they don't string top to bottom, but they string side to side, would be to bring multiple strands of the seed beads through the heart, then out the other side, then another cluster of seed beads.
Right. So maybe you use 3 strands or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably need more beads, but you know me with more beads, maybe even 4 strands.
Right.
And then the other idea before we start talking about Terry's question would be to do an RBG collar.
Oh, that was the other thing that I was thinking of. I think it would be great. Yes.
You know, and with the red, the black, and the silver.
Yeah.
Just be.
And these would really be the drops on the bottom of the collar points.
Yeah, I think like in between the picots or something, you know, it would look really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it would look really cool. Definitely. Yeah. Well, the hearts, you know, and I know that, you know, hearts aren't everybody's jam, and I'm not a huge heart fan, but I like them when they're a little bit different. And the cool thing about these Swarovski hearts, and I'm going to kind of put it to the side here so you can see it, they are dimensional. They have a super vintage feel to them, right? Super vintage. And one of the things that one of our commenters saying, the teller is saying, is she says in a different design, she's used heart beads upside down as the body in a skeleton. So it's kind of like a rib cage kind of an effect, right? So if you were making a little skeleton or a little person out of wire, you could flip that that heart upside down, which I think is also pretty cool. So let me get some soft flex here. Or she was saying maybe it was right side up. She doesn't remember, but I think that upside down, it looks like a little torso too. It's kind of cool. So let me string on just a few of these so we get a feeling for how these look.
And you're using the 014, Kate?
Yeah, I'm using the 0.014, correct.
Okay.
And I also wanted to show, if I string this through the heart, this is another thing that Janice and I would do when we start to design, and it's kind of hard to see with the dark, but can you see there's just one strand of soft flex through there now? But you can see how big the hole is. I would say, JP, I could easily get 4 strands of this 0.014 through here, easily.
But you might have to take the 4 strands and go through one bead before you go into the heart bead, so that they taper down into.
So they taper down. Yeah.
Like into either a pointed crystal or round 8/0 bead.
Right, something that would just, I happen to have here, maybe it's not the right one, but here's an 8/0 that has kind of a biggish hole, not probably as big as we'd want it. Oh, look what I've got here. That might be a little too big, and it might be the wrong bead, but because it's the wrong color, but a regular size shadow and silver would work.
Of course it's a shadow.
Of course it is, because there's one just lying here. Let me just string a few of these, and then we're going to string that heart button on the end, and I'll show you how I'd crimp it to answer Terry's question. So, and this bead mix, you get a lot. So if you did want to string a whole bunch, you could just add the beads or add another. I had the purple bead that went with this. I was going to grab it, but I didn't. Remember when we were kind of playing around with the mix?
Yeah.
JP, I had a purple in there, and you can see I've added the purple leather to it, and I think a purple would be kind of fun with this too. So let's say that I've strung my necklace, okay, or however I'm going to do it, or if it's a bracelet or whatever. And I could do this with a clasp, the self same, you know, just regular clasp. but I'm going to do it with a button instead. So here's my button, and I put the button on first because the button is really going to dictate how big you have to make the loop on this piece. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to put my crimp tube on. And one of the things that helps me, and I'm going to do this with this A dot here. Okay, so just bear with me on this. This is how it helps me get everything straight and on the straight and narrow. So here's my crimp. Okay, here's my, and let's pretend this was a silver A dot. I'm going to get a little closer so you guys can see that, but rather than a copper, but this is just demo time. Okay, I'm going to use, because I always use them, almost always use them, are wire guards.
And I am so glad you're using them, because especially with a button, with that big metal shank that's going to go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
This little, doohickster is going to protect that wire.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver.
For centuries, I want to say. For centuries.
So here's this. Or at least.
Now can you pinch it open and pinch it closed, Kate?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do that quite yet. So see how, I want to see how it fits in there, and it fits perfectly. Okay, so now what I do is I go through and I'm holding them parallel, the strands of soft flex, I mean. I put that bead through and I put the crimp tube through. Okay, still holding it side by side. Now, JP, you asked and anticipated correctly, do I close that together? And the answer is yes. I gently, can you see that? I'll come in, boop, and I'll just tighten it up. Now, with using this wire guard, now the strands almost can't help but be side by side. Okay, so what I do at this point is I kind of spread the strands open a little bit, and I can see that nothing is twisted. If they were twisted, let me kind of purposefully kind of twist it. It's almost hard for me to do that. It'll skew off to the side. So the wire guards almost automatically make everything happen. Okay, and as I've squeezed these closed, I squeeze them just enough. Can you see they're not quite closed? Okay, me and my raggedy hands. And then I come in. Now, this is the kicker, kids. I spread the strands apart. See if I can grab it here. And I can tell, I think purposefully twisting it gave me a little bit of an issue here. So let me just untwist it. There we go. I can see how everything, it looks like it's not twisted here. Okay, like this. Then I'll come in and I'm going to turn it to the side so you guys can see it. But first and foremost, can you see there's no crimp hanging out from either side of the crimping chamber in this Xuron plier? Now, as I crimp, I spread that stringing material out. So as I close the crimping plier, the little crimp that I've made comes right in the middle. Okay, and it's not so tight that I can't, I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. I'm going to turn it to the side and I'm going to close it up. And so this section here has just a slight bit of play in it here because I'm going to add, there's just like a fingernail's width in there. I'm going to come in and add my crimp cover.
Kate, did you use the second channel? I missed that. Did you
Yeah,
use
so
the
thanks,
second
JP.
channel?
I did. So here is the first channel, the crimping channel, the one with the little tooth. And since this is the 2x2, the Xuron has, and you can see the holes, a 1 millimeter or thereabouts, a 2 to 2.5 millimeter, and then a 3 millimeter and larger rounder. Okay, so that's the rounder. This is the crimper. And we have some great skill builders on the crimping. I'm going to see if I can turn this around, and then someone had a question then for the other side, and I'll talk about that as well. So I get this crimp cover around the crimp tube like it's a little Pac-Man, right? Eating the crimp. Can you see? It's hard to get that focus. There we go. Like so. Okay. Then I am going to come in and gently squeeze it. I use really the tips of my plier, and then I put it in the largest rounder, and I'll turn it to the side so you guys can see it. I want to get this arranged correctly. See that, how the opening of that crimping plier is here? I just give it a little squeeze, and that opening of the crimp cover closes right up. Then I come in.
Boy, you should open Crimp Cover University. I mean,
right there.
Amazing.
So there's that. Okay. So now there was another question, and I'm sorry I didn't see who it was. It's a little too far back in the chat, but I'm going to cut another piece of so I'm going to cut it, and this is going to be, you know, if you watch me at all, you know I like to make the world's tiniest bracelets. So as my demo pieces, so let me put on another heart just for fun. And these would also look good, you know, Janice, if we got the Clio clasp and you made a multiple strand bracelet where all of these hearts were, maybe you could use the Clio 3 and do a 3-strander, but all of the hearts would be kind of laid out like that. I think would look kind of
delicious.
Fun, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so Hale's asking, it's a good question. If you mess up the crimp cover, how do you get it off? Well, I'll show you. You got to practice. I would warm up and practice before I would do like a practice crimp, and then just practice putting the crimp cover, over the top before you do it on your necklace. I'm a big proponent of kind of warming up in the bead bullpen before you do that. But what you can also do is what I've done in the past, especially if it's on the first side, I get my wire cutter, and see, you can see where the seam is. I kind of get the wire cutter in, right? And I just kind of, I try and slice it, slide it open, get a little, get a little opening in there. And then I'll kind of try and use my fingernails or whatever to pry it open. And then usually it falls off. But it's delicate surgery, that's for sure.
Well, on the first side, if you mess up, you can just really cut it off and start again.
Right, cut it off and start again. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, you could. Okay, so let's say that now I'm going to make this into a bracelet, and I'm going to make a loop on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing that I did on this side, but instead of making a loop that has the wire guard, we're going to make a loop that has seed beads. Okay, so let me get another, I'm going to get an 8/0. So first I'm going to put on my crimp cover, my crimp tube. Okay, crimp tube first. then this 8/0 or whatever large hole bead. If you have multiple strands, or that would be a little bit different, but just for this single. So I'm gonna guess, I don't know, I'm gonna need a bunch of beads on here. That one's
Kate, we can't
and
see
I am
anything.
not. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Janice. There you go. I was so intent on getting this loop done that I didn't have my eye on the monitor.
And you put the crimp bead on already.
I did, and I'll
Okay,
show you
good.
guys that, where it is. And again, I'm just doing this super randomly. And so once I've got some beads on here, and then I don't think that's going to be quite right. I think I need a few more. And again, these are the size 8 from the mix. I'll go ahead and I will just go back through really carefully. Go through that 8/0, go through that crimp tube. Pull that down, tighten it up so that I get, I don't want to screw around with this too much yet because I may have to make this loop larger or smaller. So see how I'm going to come in and I need to make sure, see how this is about like one bead too big. Can you see that? Even when it's at the widest point, I think it's just a hair loose. So I'm going to pull it back out, take it off, and put it back on. Put one back on because I took off 2. So this, for this loop, I'll count them so you can tell. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 21 beads. So I'm going to go back to where that 8/0 is, and it's a metal 8/0, so the hole is nice and big. It gives me something to aim for. I'll go through here. Now, before I tighten everything up, this is super important, and it's important in all ways. Every time I close something with soft flex, let me get that out of the way so it's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to put my loop around, and before I super tighten everything, I'm going to slide it down. And again, I need a little bit of play there. So see how this goes over really nicely like that. And it's not so big and floppy that the button is going to come out. Maybe I could take out one more. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. And you have to measure it when you do stuff like this, right? So Janice, you might use, if you were doing this, you could incorporate like like that's in that necklace we're going to do with your pearls. You made the loop out of leather.
Yes.
Right? So you could tie a loop of leather onto a wire guard even.
Yes, you could.
If you wanted, right?
Yep.
That looks about right. So I took off a couple more beads. So I'm going to make sure before I crimp this, I'll get my hand out of the way so you guys can see the world's tiniest heart bracelet here. You want to make sure that there's play in here, what we call play. If I were to crimp this and it would be flat and not in a circle, I could easily crimp it too tightly, and that crimp tube is just, regardless of how tight or how well it's crimped, it's gonna eventually succumb to the pressure, right? Of that. So let me.
Well, you want your soft flex to feel like jewelry strung on thread. You
Right.
don't want it to feel like it's on wire. So in
Right.
order to do that, the beads need to be able to bend to go around a circle. And when
Right.
you crimp, this is a very, it's done a lot by first-time beaders where they crimp on one end and then they pull the beads up, put another crimp bead on the other side. It's laying out like a tape measure or ruler, and then they crimp it on the other side. And when they go to clasp it, either the stringing wire or soft flex pops, or it looks so wrinkled and it never feels. You want to be able to, you want to be able to touch it so that it feels like your beads are on thread.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But not enough wire showing that it looks really loose. Now,
Right.
Kate, I used to get a question, well, when I lay it out flat, I can see a little bit of the stringing wire. I don't want to see that stringing wire. And then I would reply to them, are you ever going to wear your necklace on one straight line, or are you going to wear it on a circle?
Right.
And the answer is always, I'm going to wear it as a circle.
So exactly.
Laying out flat, yeah, you will see maybe an eighth or a quarter of an inch of stringing wire. It depends.
Maybe. Yeah, on the size of your beads, right?
But that's, you need that for the wire because it's not going to stretch.
Right.
You need that for the beads to be able to turn a corner or to go round.
Exactly. And see how I've crimped this? I caught it in that A-dot. I had missed it before, but I went back through, caught it through that A-dot. I still have plenty of room here because the crimp cover, you guys, when I put the crimp cover on, it's going to take up room, right? So we just have to make sure that, I'm turning it here. Sorry, I've got to get it a little closer to my eye.
You have to be able to see it, yeah.
And then I'll put it back. So here we go. Let me show you here. Let me pull this up a little bit. So there's my crimp on the inside of that plier. And I'll just, and I want to make sure it's nice and parallel. And I'll squeeze it closed. Okay, and give it that final hug with the tips. And this is that Xeron tool. And now, and when I crimped, I did that same thing where I held the strands like this, and so it went to either side of the crimp. And now I'll cut it away. And I'll add that crimp cover on.
Kate, doesn't the crimp cover also take up a little bit of the air you might have?
No, that's exactly right. So that's why, like when I say we need to leave a little bit of that extra air. So see, when I pull it up around the sides like a little Pac-Man, I still have a little bit, I can see a little bit of thread and stuff here. Not a lot, right? But again, it still has that movement. So I'm going to come in, close it. And then I will put it in the circle, the biggest one. I'll turn it to the side so you can see that. And as it's turned, I tighten it. And it was off just a hair, so I'm going to close it that way. And there it's all closed. But you can see I still have a lot of nice movement with this, okay? And I'll take it apart so you can see both sides here.
Can you lay it out straight, Kate, so we can see how much actual little bit of wire? Is there a little bit showing?
Yeah, there hardly is, but you can see, Janice, if I pull this here, there's just a hair. And it could even use maybe just a hair more, but actually it's not too bad at all, I think. So that's how we would address that question. So the original question was, if you jumped in a little bit late, was under a crimp tube, when you have a crimp tube, a nice straight crimp tube like this, we would go through, you bring your soft flex through, you bring it through whatever you're bringing it through, and it comes back through. And as you crimp down, how do we avoid crossing our threads rather than rather than keeping them parallel like this. So the first of that was using that wire guard really helps your strands stay in their lane, stay in the right channel. I'm going to look at a couple of the other questions. I don't know if there were any other questions that were in the chat here. Let me see. I'm just going to go back through. And then let me go here to our thing. And this is one for a future one. And Janice, you might want to give this one a thought. Faye had a question that I don't think we'll have time to address today, but to review how to add leather to cording to a wrap if you find that it's too short.
Do you mean
I don't
like
know if
alley
you
style?
have done that.
Is that? Do you mean like alley style?
Like the splice, I think. Yeah. So what you can do, I mean, there's some creative ways that you could get creative, definitely, with it.
That's just.
But you could always.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say you could always do that splice where you'd have to cover it up or silk wrap over the top or something.
It's too much work for me.
If you have two kind of diagonal cuts and you bring them together and you glue them, you could always silk wrap over the top of that and then bring them together and then macrame over the top of those two. That might work as well. I've got some other bead doctor, let's see, questions here, I think.
Could I just go back real quick while you're reading
Sure.
that and answer what I might do? So it's happened to me. I'm short. I don't have enough. I want to add, some more. What I first do
I have you on camera here.
Okay. What I first do is I end it. I decide to do this before I completely run out of my leather. I don't want to do it like, oh, let me keep praying that it's going to work and it's going to work and I'm going to get to the end.
Mm-hmm.
What I would probably do is I would find a bead with a large hole, and then I would probably macrame or join the two, then cover them up. Like I'd probably glue them together, then either do a silk wrap or macrame, and then put the large hole bead over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then to reinforce that, if I was working with KO and a needle, I would bring my my macrame, or forget the KO, I would bring I'd start the macrame above the large hole bead and then macrame that in and then continue macrameing. Somehow joining them together so all the like unfortunates are underneath the big hole bead.
I like how you call the unfortunates. That's right. That's right. The ones that have a little bit of an issue. Here is a really great question from Paul, and I'm going to put it up there. Are there different qualities of crimp tubes, and which are the best to purchase? Well, the tubes that we carry, and I'm going to try, I had some little pieces of note paper here in the drawer. Of course, when I clean something up, it never is quite the same as when I have everything out, but I've got a little note here. I have I'm going to change this over here.
Can you minimize me, Kate?
Yep, I can.
I mean, I took a hair out of my eye and I realized I'm like front and center.
You're so front and center on camera. Yes, I've moved you. There you go.
Thank you.
So here's what the crimp tubes that we carry are like a 2x2 crimp tube. Well, we carry some different sizes, but I'll address this 2x2. right? So if this is your tube right here, your crimp tube, okay, and it kind of, I don't know, I'm not a very good perspective drawer, but you know, however it is in a cylinder, right? When that 2x2, when you use a crimping plier, and the crimping plier looks like this, greatly enlarged for, and this is the old school kind that just has the two heads in the jaws, okay? When you use a tube, a flat tube like this, and of course, you know, it kind of is a heavy walled tube like this. And so you can see the wall of the tube is heavy rather than it being super thin. When you put that crimp tube right here in your crimping plier, it smashes, for the lack of a better term, that crimp. So what you get is what ends up looking like a little smashed taco or a little pair of lips or something, right? And you want to make sure that that divot that you've put in, that crimp, goes all the way down the crimp tube, okay? So that then when you put it in your crimping plier like this, okay, and flatten it, what you get is a crimp tube that's nice and flat, that looks like a little folded over piece, okay? If you do that with a rounded crimp bead, like this, and some people love crimp beads, right? These are much better just flattened. They don't really fold, right? The roundness of this bead doesn't make them get a divot as much in the center, so you can fold it. A lot of these, and there's different tools that are good for that. There's a crimping tool called the magical crimp tool that, you know, it's fine. What it does is it kind of flattens the crimp so it looks like a round crimp like this. So it kind of looks like a little ravioli almost. It has these little ends that kind of end up looking like this. And then you kind of fold it in and it kind of folds in like that. I have found in my almost 30 years of crimping necklaces closed that using a heavy walled cylinder crimp tube, crimping it flat so the channel is there, and then folding it so you get this is the strongest that I've found. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, JP.
Well, I always recommend whatever, you want a tube. We call them beads, but if you're purchasing them someplace else, look for the word tube, not crimp bead. And you want a thick wall. And the reason you want a thick wall is you want the metal of your crimp wall to adhere as much as possible to every strand of wire.
Right.
So if it's a thin little skinny crimp tube, it's got a thin little skinny connection to your wire. If it's kind of a thick or plump tube, then that wire is going to, the metal of the tube is going to hug your strands of Softlex. Sterling silver crimp tubes, we don't sell them now. We used to. Those are very good. We've tested our crimp tubes. They're not expensive, but they work. They're base metal. They're plated, but I've had years of luck with them. Have you, Kate?
Yeah, no, I agree. I really like them. And I think that I'm looking here for a different sample, but like I say, I've been using these for forever, and that matched up with your crimping plier, I think gives you a lot of mileage on those tubes.
Right.
So the last question I want to get to today, and it was a good one, and it also kind of dovetails into a tool we're going to be getting because we've been talking about it so much. Julie Mercer said she had some questions about rosary loops. She was watching our Tiara Casta video when I made those earrings with the loops, and also the Bead-A-Lon challenge when I made the rosary loops on these pieces. And she said, when do you rosary loop versus wire wrapping? And then she also mentioned rosary pliers. How are those different from other pliers? And so number one, I'll show you that the rosary plier, and I don't have it sitting here, but the rosary plier has a cutter right in the center. So it's a cutter and a looper all in one, where just the simple round nose plier that looks like this, you would use an external cutter. And they were made for making rosaries, right? Cutting and looping, cutting and looping. And you can see here the difference. Let me get a little tighter here. Okay. This is a rosary loop, right? There's no wrapping here. Okay, like this. There's no wrapping. So I use this if I want links of beads to be close together, right? You need, though, to remember that a loop like this, a rosary loop, isn't wrapped or isn't closed, so it's a little more fragile. But this wire I used on this piece, this was 18 gauge, and I made the loops kind of small-ish, so it's not going to pull apart too much, right? The wire wrap, you can see I did a wrap here, and I actually did an intentionally messy wire wrap. And I came up through this large hold bead, but it would be, you know, it's a loop. I wire wrapped it, and then I wire wrapped this one. I connected that with the jump ring here so it would have some movement. But anytime I don't mind seeing a little more wire around my bead, right, like this, and this section, this bead that I made here, this connection point, this had to be super sturdy because it was going into this loop and kind of moving around. So I didn't want two open connections right next to each other. So that's why I chose that. I think that the situation, though, kind of dictates what it is that you use. What about you, JP? What do you use when you're...
Well, when I rosary loop, there's an intention of first looking at what is the purpose of the wrap or using the wire. You have to use a heavier gauge wire in order to do a rosary loop. And we have a skill builder on this. Rosary pliers were originally manufactured because nuns used to sit there and take a bead, put it on a wire, cut the wire, make the loop, and not have to put their pliers down, pick up the cutter, put down the cutter, pick up the pliers. And so the tool was designed for rosaries. If you look closely at a rosary, and they get a lot of use, there's meditation stations, they're touched all the time. And we wouldn't make them with rosary loops if in fact they didn't hold. Sometimes we used to, as bead doctor, get in rosaries to repair because one of them would open. And almost in all cases, the wire was not heavy enough.
Right, the wire was
they used like 24 gauge and then they would pull apart. So if you're using wire that's at least 20 gauge, 20, and then I know it's counterintuitive to think of the next bigger size is 18 and then the next bigger size is 16, but you'll get a nice rosary loop that will hold up with 18 gauge. And then would you say 20 gauge, Kate? You could use 20 gauge?
I would go down to 20. And the thing is, I have, what do I have here? I have some 24 gauge, which is a little small if you were doing a rosary, but I want to show you on this. And here's my rosary plier. Someone mentioned, though, that they have found that the rosary plier cutters don't cut the very best, and that is actually true. And they're only really meant to cut wire in this manner, right? They're going to give you kind of a blunt off cut. And you don't want to cut hard wire or anything like this. This is my pair of rosary pliers. So you can see the cutter is here in the center, and then I've got the heads of my tool here. So let's say if I were making my rosary loop, especially on this 24 gauge, I'm going to get really tight up against here. My loop for a 24 gauge, if it's a rosary loop, it has to be small in order to hold, right? The bigger the loop you make with a thinner wire, the more easily it is to pull out. But can you see here, I made a perfectly serviceable loop, especially if these are small beads. They're going to be fine. And then I'll come in and I'll cut. What I do is I try and cut like in the middle or towards the bottom of the cutter here, and I'll just cut really nice and tight, and I'll kind of pull this wire away. So it gives me a nice cut, and then I put my A-dots away already. But
so this plier, I mean, the cutter on this plier is not meant to be used as your like everyday cutter. It
right,
is,
like for soft flex or other things.
yeah.
That's right.
So getting a rosary plier now is for someone who wants to make rosaries or somebody who wants the convenience in doing a design with rosary loops to have one tool that will work continuously. If most of you notice, we have not been doing it. We're going to get rosary pliers in. They're called pliers, not cutters. We're going to get them in, but if you've watched us for several years now, you've never seen us doing a project that has wire wrapping or rosary loops where we used a rosary plier. We've always used a plier and a cutter. So you don't have to have this. It's not an essential tool. And it's certainly not good as a cutter. It's only good for this particular process, this technique.
Cutting. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so see here how I'm cutting away. This is maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, maybe. It's not much, right? So that's what I'm cutting away. And this, since it's 24 gauge, I'm making that small loop. And it just takes a little bit of practice, but here you go. Can you see here, there's the little section. Let me make sure they're both pointing the same way. It'll be easier for you to see. And again, we have a skill builder on the two loops. So let me take it there, and I'm going to rotate them, and then you'll be able to see how both of those loops are small, but very.
You kept it short, Kate. So I'm sorry for interrupting. You kept it short, the beaded piece, so that the two loops would not have to do a lot of work keeping it closed. If you use that same loop on the end of 3 inches of wire, the wire would bend, and then the loops would probably pull open. But if you wanted to do a whole chain of little sections like this, you could use 24 gauge wire. You would just keep them very short, and they wouldn't have a lot of work to do to stay closed.
So this is another good question, or a good example of rosary loops where I didn't want a lot of wire wrapping showing for these chandelier earrings, right? And the wire's a little bit heavier, but these are those 24 gauge head pins. But again, can you see, like on this section, I made the loops pretty small. This is why the eye pins that I used, which are about a 21 gauge that we carry. So the loops on these are a little bit bigger, right? They can be a little bit larger because the wire is a little more of a heavy weight. Had these had a whole bunch of wire wraps to them, right, it would be really long. It would be unsightly. You'd see so much wire wrap, right?
It would also be heavy.
Yeah, and it would add weight. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So so that's when I would do it. But you see here at the very top of this piece, for strength, I wire wrapped it.
Yeah.
Because the wire goes underneath here. Here's the wire. and I came in, and since this whole earring is hanging off that loop, you need to wire wrap it. Okay.
And then did you wire wrap them all going in onto that cap?
No, they're only looped.
No, but I'm sorry. Did you rosary loop them in the direction going in so that the
Inside,
opening is?
yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
good point. That's exactly right, JP. All of the opening on the loop is facing towards the inside of the earring itself, not on the outside. That's exactly right.
And why
Number
did you
one,
do that?
well, it makes it look nicer, number
Yeah.
one. And I think it also maybe protects that loop a little bit too from catching if it would be.
And maybe it won't snag on your hair as easily.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that. Okay. So, so that's that. So let me show you a couple of things now that we're going to wrap here. We're going to wrap it up because another episode of Bead Doctor has come to a close. But I want to show you guys, and I'm going to highlight this. As you know, tomorrow we're doing the kind of the mini Tucson, or at least my segment is tomorrow for the mini Tucson version of the Great Bead Extravaganza. And I had really wanted to do something with the wrap, with the herringbone wrap. I have been so into kind of the laddering lately and with super duos. I also wanted to show you, I did finish, Karen, I think has taken the photo already, but we finished the piece from Wednesday. And so if you kind of want to make a duo that kind of, I don't know, wraps nicely for a stack or whatever, but you can see how, there we go. It just fits. It fits really perfect. I love how it looks. But I kept going with this super duo, and this is the super duo herringbone stitch, but I have added it. We have this in some of our herringbone wraps. This, I think, is the hardest thing for people to get, is adding an A-dot bead into your herringbone. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow on our segment on the Great Bead Extravaganza. And I love how it gives, it's a little bit hard to see, but it gives a little bit of an open work question, okay, or an open, not question, an open work look to it. Again, it's a little hard to see. If I put it on the yellow, maybe it's easier.
I think we can see it. I can see it. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of.
It kind of opens it up, but I really like it. So we're going to talk about, we just have an hour segment tomorrow. And if you go to the homepage of the website right now, there is a slider that's up, and you can go straight to the project ingredients. But the cool thing about this is you need one strand or one tube of super duos. You need one tube of A-dots, and you need one of our bundles of leather and a button. I'm going to use KO for the stitching, and I'm going to use Infinity Stitch. And I know there's a collective groan out there sometimes when I say Infinity Stitch, but it really is the thing to do with this. And I think it just really looks terrific on. Okay, and check your newsletters in the morning because we've got some fun stuff that that's coming up. So if you want to join us, and let me put that up there. I'll put this up here. It'll be tomorrow, Saturday, February 6th. We're gonna stream it on all of our outlets, but you can find it on the Great Bead Extravaganza page. But you'll find my personal one. It'll go out on all of our various platforms. Wherever you're watching now, you'll be able to see it. And it will be archived, as always, on our YouTube channel. Our buddy Neely Patel of Silver Silk, he made all these cute little photos of everybody who is participating. So he pulled this photo, and I look at it and I go, I remember my dark hair. I remember those days. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
Well, I'm going to join you, Kate. I'm going to be on YouTube.
Oh, great. You'll go on YouTube and do some moderating. That'll be great.
Yeah. Some chatting and chewing.
I love that story. So I'm going to pull
And
this out.
it's 6:30. It's 6:30. It's
6:30
sun's
your
down
time. Yeah,
somewhere. Sundown
right.
somewhere in the world.
And it'll be 3:30 here, so
Yeah.
you never know. I might have to
Yeah.
break open that mimosa that Tierra
Yeah.
Cast
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
dangerous. I'm going to remove me and put the two of us there. There we go. Let's get us on equal footing. There we are. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow. I wanted to mention also, you guys, of course, you can find us on all of our social media. You can follow us at beadshop.com on Instagram. Drea is so good with our Instagram account. She puts up little
Yeah.
teasers and little things, so it's a great way to follow us. Of course, you can join us at the Bead Table, which is our Facebook group that has almost 6,000 members now and so much creativity on there. You won't know what to think. Of course, you can subscribe to our beadshop.com YouTube channel, where everything is archived. You can find a lot of skill building videos and stuff there as well. And of course, you can shop everything, all of the information on the project and the products from today's broadcast on our website. Now, if you have some questions for our next Bead Doctor segment, and we're going to work through them. We had some other questions today that we just couldn't get to, but that I think are really great for future broadcasts. Submit those questions right to info@beadshop.com. We're keeping a running list of those, which is great. So if we didn't get to it today, don't worry, we will get to it, or we may devote a whole show to it. Who knows? It's going to be a lot of fun. So for next week, we've got some fun projects up for you. We've got something that Drea sent in, which is great. And then the week after that, Janice,
Yeah.
you have sent already this magnum opus of a color study that's going to be incredible. So I can't wait for you guys to see that one.
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be
I
good.
think I made it 8 wraps.
It's epic.
I think I just had too much to say. I just
Well,
couldn't stop.
well, it's going to be one for the ages. You guys are really going to love it. We have a great color study handout that you can go and download beforehand if you want to take a look at it. It includes laddering with chain. We're gonna that one's going to be a pretty epic episode, so it may actually flow a little bit into the Friday Free Tip Friday broadcast for that. Next Friday, though, we're going to talk about, and you guys have been so kind with all of your comments about my piece from the Bead-A-Lon Challenge. What we're going to talk about next week, and I'm hoping I can persuade Janice to come back on with me because it's almost like a Bead Doctor 2 a little bit. But this piece, we're going to talk a little bit about design because it'll be a good precursor to Janice's color study about how you look forward. We'll look forward a little bit to her piece and how she kind of looks at design that way. And I'm going to talk about how you kind of look at a group of beads and start to make sense of them to create your own looks and your own design. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope, Janice, I just put you on the spot, but I hope.
That's fine. Kate, we've had questions about necklace lengths. Would you do me a favor? Would you shorten that a little bit on you? Just hold it up a little shorter. Just pull it up so everyone can see what it looks like.
Yeah.
If you pull it up
it's hard to tell with my hearts, but and this one, of course, I made in the challenge, so it was super quick. But we're going to do a whole other show on necklace lengths. Unfortunately, since our normal Facebook page has been hacked, we've lost some video content, which was kind of a bummer.
So everyone who's watching now, I want you to look at Kate's face. Don't look at the necklace. Look at her face. And now, Kate, I want you to shorten it a little bit and then lengthen it, but keep your head up, okay? So we can see. Can you keep that in the center? So
there we go. So there it is, even a little shorter.
Right. Now lengthen it to where you have it and then look up at us. So everyone can see it's sort of like magical what happens. So do you see how draggy? It just
Right.
looks
It's
draggy on
too-
you.
Mhm.
I don't have a better descriptive word than draggy, but the minute you uncling it from and you put it where it belongs on you,
Mhm.
all of a sudden
It
your
looks like a
face
million bucks.
lights up.
It's hard for me
And
to get it
that's
in
what,
thinner.
yeah. Well, we'll have to do it with pearls or something. I'll
Yeah,
wear
we'll
a
do it.
next time when
But
we do
see,
that.
even with
Yeah.
this and with this side, yeah, it lays correctly, right? And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things. And I wanted to use as many things as I
Oh,
could. Really.
sure. You weren't
And
making it to wear at the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah. But it really is like this section is almost the too long section here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about design. We're going to talk a little bit about how you look at a bunch of ingredients. And Janice, maybe, we'll have your color study for that. For that one, Janice just ran off. I bet she's going to come right back.
This is what I have.
Oh, yeah, the pearl.
This is what we use to figure out length.
Yeah, the length. And so
Yeah.
we'll do a whole free
Yeah.
tip on length, and we have a little chart that you guys can chart your own lengths and stuff, what works with your necklaces. But next Friday, we'll kind of look forward to your design. We'll look back on this design, and we'll talk. That looks great. All those pearls. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
This is my Kamala look.
Yes, that's
or
right.
my Barbara Bush look.
Your Barbara, and you will tell the story when we do
I'll tell the
that.
story, the Barbara
You'll
Bush
tell,
story.
you'll
Yeah.
tell the Barbara Bush story, which is a bead shop classic. It's a classic. I might even have the letter still.
I do.
Oh,
I
that,
think
yeah.
I have it up on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. The AP. Janice was on the AP wires. All right. Well, everybody, have a great rest of your Friday. I will see you tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern on the Great Bead Extravaganza channel, but we'll also stream it on all of our streaming platforms. So wherever you're watching, you'll be able to find us. So again, thank you guys so much. You can submit your questions for Bead Doctor to info@beadshop.com. And of course, without you guys, our small business would not be here. So we really, really, really appreciate you. And I will talk to you soon, JP, and I'll see all of you guys online tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone. Stay
Bye,
safe.
everyone.
Wear those masks and social distance.
Yes,
Shots are
ma'am.
coming. All right. See you guys soon.